Welcome, my dear ones. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we'll be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Cara was pregnant with her first child and went into denial about going into labour. Unexpected things happened, which put her into an intense state of stress, and she discusses how this influenced her bonding with her daughter. With these lessons under her belt, for baby number 2, she prepared doing the Transform Your Birth course and experienced a painless labour and an instant bond with her son. A beautiful story of how one labour can change the next and how we can transform ourselves through the act of giving birth to our children. Enjoy. Hi there, my darlings. It's another week where we have a wonderful story, 2 stories actually, coming today with the lovely Cara, who has a 10-year-old little girl and a 3-year-old little boy. Welcome, Cara. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now, Cara, you were 23 when you had your first baby.
Yes.
What sort of preparation did you do leading up to her birth?
Nothing. I was kind of in denial that I was pregnant. Like, I knew that I was going to have a baby and I knew that I had a baby in me, but the whole thing was just so surreal. I never really connected with the pregnancy at all, or really connected at all.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the ways that we often, and the mind often will deal with things, is we go into denial about the fact that
very
we've
much
got to deal
denial.
with this. Yeah.
Very much so denial.
You know, which has its advantages because you're not really overthinking things too much, but the disadvantage is that when things go off the normal path, it can get really tricky. So, Cara, what ended up happening with the birth of your first child?
So my waters broke at 28 weeks. I found out because I had an infection and I was put into hospital straight away. And I was in hospital for about 2 weeks. But during those 2 weeks, it was just a lot of every day was like, she might come today, or we might have to rush you off to a C-section. It was just very monitoring and very scary.
Wow.
And then exactly 2 weeks after I was admitted, I started to go into labour and I had her, and it was a very scary labour, very painful. I tried every kind of pain medication I could. She was in a lot of distress. So in the end, they ended up having to deliver her by forceps.
Right.
And she pretty much just got carted away straight away. So it was like a holding up, like Lion King kind of moment. Here's your baby. And then there was about 15 doctors in the room, and then they just took her away. And that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I just go a little bit further with that? How did that experience influence your early mothering?
I had a lot of postnatal depression, which didn't really fester until she was about 2, which I just went through the motions. So she was always fed. I always held her. I always looked after her, but there was no connection there. It was very hard for me. I had a bit of resentment towards her because it was kind of like, you came early, like I wasn't ready. And it was very hard. And then I would hate on myself because I'd be like, this is my daughter, this is my baby.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to just accept that what I was feeling was okay and it was normal.
Yeah.
And I still loved her, and I just had a lot of work to do on myself and try and grow a connection with her with what we had. And so it took a long time for me to accept that and to move forward. So it wasn't until she was about 4 or 5 that I really started to become a mother in that sense.
Wow.
And enjoy spending time with her and enjoy being with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very tough journey.
Yeah, it is. We
Yeah.
often say to women, oh, you've got a healthy baby, get on with it. But we don't realize that it's not just the birth of a baby, it's the birth of a mother and a father
Yeah.
or other mother, whatever format your family takes. But that transition, that doorway into parenthood is a very significant moment, and it acts as a catalyst to activate certain things within us. And when we go through that experience where we're not given the ideal conditions hormonally and physiologically, and we're having to deal with the uncertainty of what type of birth am I going to have, a preemie baby, which means that, the chance of you being able to hold her straight after are really slim. All of those things which in a perfect world would happen don't always happen. And we measure the process of, well, the baby's alive, okay, so we're good to go. And forget that there's been a great cost to that process in helping the mother make that transition. Does that feel like what you experienced the first?
Yeah, it was extremely hard, and it kind of fed into my denial process, not even going home with her.
Yeah.
And then there were lots of things that happened. So like I went to the hospital and they moved her and they didn't tell me.
Oh,
and
wow.
so when I went to go for what I thought was my baby, it took me like a minute to realize that wasn't my baby, and I have no idea. And then I'm like, I didn't even recognize that wasn't my baby straight away. Like it was just
honey.
all of these things just like kept on happening. And yeah, it was extremely hard, very hard to take that step. And then you had like the issues with trying to express and trying to breastfeed and those kind of things. So yeah, it was very stressful time. And being so preemie, she would often get sick. And so even when she did come home, we were in and out of hospital because she would often get infections and get sick, stop breathing. So yeah, it was a very stressful time.
But ultimately, you had to process your experience of this whole thing once you described once she hit 4 to 5 years old. What started to happen about then that helped you to come to terms with that? What had actually unfolded with her birth?
It was forgiving myself.
Yeah, right.
Really, it was me just kind of saying that it's okay. Like what I was feeling, it doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
It doesn't make me a bad mother. Like that was like the biggest journey that I could have taken was me just going, it's okay. What I can do is okay. And so once I started forgiving myself and acknowledging, and I started to talk about it, like I'm someone that likes to talk about a lot. And so I would start to tell people, even people that were pregnant, I'll be like, if you don't feel that instant connection, it's okay. Like you will be fine. Don't worry. And so I actually started talking about it. And then that also helped my healing process because every time I said it, I believed it a little bit more in myself.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful description of the integration of an experience like that in coming, ultimately taking what was a really rough journey into motherhood and transitioning it, or what's the word, alchemizing it almost into something that's more useful for you moving forward, which, as you described then, is about forgiveness, self-forgiveness. One of the things that parenting does is it shows us that we're not in control of this stuff. You weren't in control of the infection or her coming early or what unfolded. You just had to get on board with what was going on. But your whole system must have been pretty overwhelmed. And but ultimately you did bond. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, we have it for a while there because I then separated from her dad as well around the same time. So for a while there, it was just her and I. And so that also helped our connection to. The stresses, the other stresses of my marriage and things like that also started to calm down. And so then I could just focus on her and me, and we were inseparable. And it just started to happen organically, I guess. It was nothing that I tried to force or anything. It was just what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and now she's 10 and she will not leave my side.
That's it. And I love to reinforce that idea too. Bonding is a lifelong process. It's not something that you have a window of opportunity, and if you miss the window, oh no, we're stuffed for life. I've just stuffed my child psychologically. That's not how bonding works. It's a continual recalibration with your children as they grow, as they change, as their needs change. And what gets lost in the early years can very easily be reclaimed when we start to grow into that role and overcome and heal from the struggle and the potential challenges that you had during that time. So then 7 years later, you find yourself pregnant again. You obviously have a few ideas about how you want to do it differently this time. Tell us about your pregnancy with number 2.
So I knew that I wanted to have another baby after a few years. And then I met my now husband, and he also wanted to have more children. He had 2 previously, and I had my 1. And then we wanted to have another child. So I became pregnant really easily, which was very lucky for us. And the whole time was just my whole pregnancy, I was just scared the entire time.
Wow.
I just would think that I was going to die, the baby was going to die. Like because I fell pregnant in October, and I remember Christmas, I would be like, this is my last Christmas. I'm not going to have any more Christmases. And then New Year, I'll be like, this is my last New Year's. I'm not going to have any more New Year's.
Oh, wow, Cara.
And then started to really get upset for my daughter. Like, where is she going to go? What her life was going to be like. I was a mess. I was really bad. And I started to obviously open up to my doctors and my medical professionals, and they had me seen by many different psychologists and psychiatrists to try and heal me in a way. But it was just for me, it was like, this is it. Like, that's it. I'm gone kind of thing. So I said to my husband, and I didn't really share all these thoughts with anyone apart from medical professionals. So my family didn't really have any idea until after he was born what I was actually going through. But I said to my husband, I was like, I need something. I just need to do something. I need a change. I need to do something differently because I need to have a different experience this time. And he was very supportive. He was like, okay, well, you kind of look in to see what you need to do, and then we'll go from there. So I started doing some research and found out about the course, and spoke to him about it, and he's like, yeah, sure, let's go in, let's do it.
So you came and did the Transform Your Birth course. How many weeks were you?
I was 31 weeks.
Okay.
So it was a very stressful time, obviously around that 26 to 30 week mark of my second pregnancy. I was very scared and stressed and anxious. So even when I came in, I was very scared, stressed, and anxious. There were a lot of things that were said that really just resonated with my husband and I. Like, he loved the explanation of your uterus just being a really strong muscle. And so he really took that. He was just like, it's just like going to the gym, or it's like exercising. We need to keep you hydrated. We need to do what we can to, train that muscle so that it will be okay. So he really took that a lot. Yeah. And for me, it was just a combination of everything. just like the talk about how you don't necessarily have to feel pain, the talk about the hormones and what's actually going on with your body, um, the planning about it, the meditations. I did the meditations every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like a lot of things that were just going on through from what was said. We
Mm.
just kept on saying ourselves. And so our birth, we were scheduled for an induction. So
Yeah.
I was a bit apprehensive about the induction. So we were trying to do what we can naturally to get the baby out, and it didn't really work. So we went to the induction, and another thing that I learned on the course was just a real positive mindset. So I like woke up and I'm like, this is an amazing day to have a baby. Like, I can't wait to meet my baby today. Like, I just kept on saying all these positive things. Um, and we got to the hospital and we had to wait a while to get the induction started. And so we just like went for a walk, and I'm like, what a beautiful day today is. Like, I'm so excited. We're about to meet our little baby. Like, this is amazing. Just like really trying to, well, not trying to, it all came naturally.
Yeah.
That I was just really happy and really excited, and just like, this is the most amazing day in the world. We're going
Darling,
to
that's
have
a
a baby.
that is a huge change.
Yeah,
So,
it was.
we can try and positive talk ourselves into
Yeah.
things, but it doesn't work unless you actually shift on a subconscious level the belief system that underpins it. So,
Yeah.
positive affirmations are great as long as your subconscious is ready to take them on. If you don't have new information, or a new understanding in order for your subconscious to accept these new ways of thinking, then it won't work. You can't positive talk yourself into, changing things. But you, by the sounds of it, you really did feel excited about, this
Yeah.
is the day we're going to meet our baby. What do you think really shifted it from not just doing the course and learning good information? All of that's great. What do you think really shifted your whole belief system into going from, God, this is awful and I might die, to, wow, this could be, amazing, meet my baby, I'm excited. Like what shifted that? That fascinates me, such a dramatic change.
I just think it was like the information, knowing the information behind everything and the
Yeah.
science behind everything, and then just always thinking of it for a long period of time, because I was 38 weeks when the induction was on. So I
Right.
was doing that work for 7 weeks. And so I really believed that it was going to be amazing and great and wonderful.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I feel like it was just knowing the science behind it and the
Yeah.
facts behind it and what could happen from other stories that I had heard through the
Yeah.
courses.
So
And
that's the new information.
yeah,
And that's what shifted the belief system within your subconscious. Then to reinforce that, do you think the practices were part of that
yeah,
reinforcement?
yeah, because I would do work on it like every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after it, I would do the
This is the point I want to
meditations.
make. Yeah.
Yeah, I would do the meditations. I would come to like the catch ups before I gave birth.
Yeah.
And it was just at the forefront of my mind every day of just these positive, happy, amazing, wonderful thoughts towards giving birth. And because I was in such a dark hole previously, all I was saying was all these negative things like, I'm going to die, my baby's going to die, this is going to be it. Like, and then switching from that to starting to think about all the things that will go right and all the things that will happen, and those, like, just switching that mindset every day. So
Yeah.
every day
Gosh.
was just a constant positivity around my baby, around the birth, around the children, around me. Just, yeah, just trying everything I
Yeah.
could, and yeah, just embedding it really.
Yeah, embedding
Yeah.
it into the nervous system. So you're not just thinking differently, you're actually laboring differently. You have a whole different physiological response to the idea of giving birth. That's just I really wanted to dive deeper into that, because I think so much of this podcast is about helping women to know what are the things that move the needle when it comes to giving birth. And I'm going to suggest to you that is number one. Birth is not a physical challenge, it is a mental challenge. And in order to get the mental part of you on board, which is what will dictate, your subconscious, it'll dictate your physiological response to birth, you need new information that's credible, not life according to Tracy, not opinion, new information that's credible, so that you actually understand the process and what you need to do to work with the birth, not against it. And then secondly, to embed that, to really lock it into the whole system. And the way to do that is to do the practices. You said you did the practices every day, and I really can't emphasize enough how powerful that is in changing not just your feeling about it, but the whole way that you laboured. And that seems to have happened. So why don't you tell us about the birth now?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was induced. So, we got to hospital about 8 a.m. and the induction didn't start until 2 p.m. So there's a lot of waiting around. And yeah, when I had like the tape or something, and pretty much as soon as I got the tape, when I got it, I was in a shared room. So there was another person there that was getting induced at the same time. And pretty much as soon as I got the tape, I started to feel some contractions. And yeah, it was just like the contractions were just like a warm, fuzzy, lovely feeling, that it was kind of like a bit surreal that they were actually contractions. But my husband and I just kept on walking around the hospital, and every time like I had a contraction, we would like stop and have like a little hug or a little moment between each other, which I think also like made it a really lovely experience as well. And he would just like rub my back or something. Like it was just very special connection between the two of us, I felt. And then he started timing them, because they were starting to become quite regular, and we wanted to know, I think we had the information about them getting less time or something. It's all a bit blurry, like details are a little bit blurry. But he started timing them. That was his job. His job was to time the contractions and make sure that I had plenty of water. Yeah. So he was just constantly just like, drink water, drink water, drink water, and timing the contractions. Then, I think it would have been about, we called the midwives, and I had like a birth plan and everything. And unfortunately, the midwife was not interested in my birth plan at all. So Stephen decided to Stephen's my husband's name, sorry, decided to just pick one thing, and that was that I would have a Bluetooth monitor, because he knew that I wanted to like walk around and I didn't want to be restricted into like a bed. And they basically said, no, we're not going to give you that. You're going to have to be hooked up. And so the plan was, if I was going to have to lay in bed the whole time, I would have an epidural. So I was like, okay, I want an epidural then. And she's like, okay. And then she left. And then she came, Stephen was chasing up the epidural. I think this was about 6:30 at this time, 6 o'clock. And Stephen started to chase up the epidural, was like, oh, I'm timing her contractions. They're starting to get less and less, like they're together. And she looked at the piece of paper, looked at my husband, looked at me, and was like, this paper's all lies. Like, she's not in labor. Look at her face. There is nothing about her face suggesting that she's in labor. If she's in labor, you would see, or having contraction, you would see that her face would change, and we cannot see anything on her face to indicate that she's in labor.
Wow.
And then he's like, but I have all of these times. The page was full from top to bottom, starting to go into the second columns. And he's like, I have all these times, we've measured them. And then she's like, I said to her, I'm like, I'm having a contraction right now. And she's like, you wouldn't be able to talk to me if you're having a contraction. You're not contracting. And then she felt my stomach and she's like, yep, can't feel anything on your stomach, so you're not in labor.
Wow.
And she then left. It took about half an hour, and I think my husband was like, I think he was fighting for the epidural or something, and the midwife there wasn't any midwives to be found. And so I demanded that he like go and push for it or go and do something because the contractions were getting closer together. And yeah, the same midwife came back and was like, I told you she's not in labor. And Stephen's like, can you just actually check her out? Like, actually see, not just feel her stomach or look at her, actually have a look. And she did. And she's like, you're 6 centimeters dilated. We need to get you into a delivery room. Like, I can't believe that you're dilated so much. And I was like, I told you. I was in labor this whole
Wow.
time. So yeah, so then she like rushed me to a delivery room pretty much. Yeah, so it was there was, like I said, there was another couple in the induction room, and I actually saw them after our babies had been born, and they were like, oh, we've made the connection that we were there at the same time and in the same room. And they're like, I can't believe your husband didn't just like punch her in the face. Like, he was terrible to you guys.
Yeah.
And we're like,
That
yeah,
was a shame, hey?
she just didn't believe us.
So finding out that you were 6 centimeters, that must have been a nice feeling.
Yeah, like the whole feeling was kind of just really nice and exciting for me. I didn't really care for this midwife. Like, this midwife did not ruin it for, like, when I talk about the story, I do talk about this midwife that was terrible, and a bit more into the birth story. She actually gets a little bit worse. But overall, when I think about the experience, I only think that it was just amazing and wonderful and great. Like, it was just those. She didn't really bother me at the time. I was just like, you're being silly. You're not actually looking into what's going on here. You don't really know. I know that I'm in labor. I know that I'm about to have a baby. Like, yeah. And she pretty much, once she examined me, she then took out the tape and then kind of got me in a delivery room really quickly. But yeah, it was just like when she examined me and said that I was 6 centimeters, I was kind of like, yeah, I knew it. I knew that I was in labor.
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't have to scream or show her that I was in pain.
So it's interesting, and this is feedback that I get a lot from people who do my course and others like it, is that women who've learnt to relax, women who've got a really good mindset, don't show the typical signs of being in labour that they would expect to see. And midwives can get a little bit caught with that because they assume that because you're still talking, there's no way you could be in what's called active labour, which is a labour that isn't likely to stop. And so if ever there was a disadvantage for doing this course, it's the same. It's that you're more likely to be misread in labour. I hear it come back time and time again. So you were misread in labour. You were a lot calmer. What were you actually experiencing, Cara? What were the sensations like?
Oh, like each contraction, I kind of explain it like going into a hot shower when you're really, really cold. So it's just like this warm, lovely, tingly feeling that goes all over your body, and it just fills your whole body with just like love and calmness and relaxation.
Wow.
And that was with each contraction. And so we would, like I said, my husband and I would just like stop if we were going for a walk, and I'll just feel all of the emotion. And I would just let myself kind of feel it. We would have like a little hug, which would kind of like intensify the feeling a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it was just like this warm, fuzzy feeling that I had with each contraction. I still felt like I felt tightness, so to
Yeah.
say. So I still felt that something was happening, but
Yeah.
it was just that tightness with that sensation running all the way down your body. So yeah, it was just a really lovely feeling to have that was just wasn't painful, it wasn't scary. It was something that I was excited to feel again because, you love that feeling of warmth and lovey-dovey and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. That's
Yeah, so it was just,
oxytocin right there.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
really lovely. And yeah, there was no spoiler alert. I never have an epidural. I didn't have any
Yeah.
medical intervention at all. I was able to do it completely. They were offering me gas at one stage, and I was like, no, because I didn't want to slow down the process, and I just wanted to just feel it. And yeah, so it was really lovely.
So what do you think was causing you to want the epidural initially then?
I just didn't want to lay in bed all the time.
No.
Like I needed to move. I knew that from my first baby that because she was so preemie, I was hooked up. It was really painful for me just to be laying in one spot on my back. And I didn't want that with my next labor.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to walk around. I wanted to be able to move around. I lay on my side and I wiggle my toes and I move around like I'm not a really fit still kind of person.
No.
And I felt that if I was being forced to lay on my back, and also I'm a bigger person, and so often with the monitors, you have to hold it. And so you're very confined in the positions you can be in. And if you move even slightly, it'll kind of move it away, and then you have to find baby again. And it's just to me, that's very uncomfortable. So
and it's one of those tricky. Continuous monitoring is one of those procedures that has found its way into a lot of women's labours without really necessarily doing the risk benefit scenario because when you're not hooked up to a monitor, the midwife checks the baby regularly, usually every half an hour, maybe every hour in early labour, every 30 minutes, and then a lot closer in second stage, they're checking the baby all the time. And they're just doing it with a handheld device called a Doppler. So when women are hooked up, and a lot of people don't realise this, they're hooked up to a continuous fetal monitor and they're stuck on the bed. Now, when women are stuck on the bed, they're not free to organically respond to what their labour is telling them to do. Now, women don't know what to do in labour, but they do it. They don't know what they don't know, but they typically do things because what they're doing is looking for comfort. So if you say to a woman, what position you want to be in, she won't know. But if you give her the freedom and the space, she'll do things that make her feel better. And what that does is supports the physiological descent and the rotation of the baby. So women being stuck on beds, it predisposes women for more needing help because they can't manage the intensity and they can't necessarily support the physiological descent of the baby either by doing that. So it is something worth weighing up the risks. And it's such a shame the midwife didn't give you the option, or maybe they didn't have enough Bluetooth monitors, because Bluetooth monitors do give you the opportunity to move.
Yeah. I don't know. She was just very against it. Like as soon as Stephen mentioned it, she was like, no, you're not having that.
Yeah.
So,
she was quite difficult, wasn't she? That was a shame. What happened in second stage when baby?
I'm like, yeah, it kind of gets a bit worse.
Okay. Oh dear.
Yeah. So I went into the delivery room, and this new midwife came in, and she was lovely. And it must have been like a change of shifts or something. And so she actually said to the midwife that had been with us since the beginning, was like, oh, you can go now. And she's like, no, I want to stay. I've seen this. I started the induction with this person. I'm going to stay with this person. I don't think that she's going to be too long, so I'm going to stick around. And so the new midwife kind of just left that. But Stephen and I heard that and we're like, no, like it's okay, she could go. But anyway, she stayed. it didn't take long. So just in the timeline, excuse me, I think it was about 7 p.m. and I had him at 7:30. So it
Oh,
was like
wow.
a very short timeline. Um, what basically happened was I had the feeling of pushing,
Mm.
which I had never had before because, like I said, with my first child, it was forceps delivery. So I never had that sensation to push. But with this baby's, my waters hadn't broken yet, and I had a sensation that I wanted to start pushing.
Yeah.
So nothing was going to stop me pushing. It was just my body was just like, you're pushing, that's it. I had no control over it, nor did I really want to fight it because
Mm.
I was just like, okay. Um, but the first midwife then came and said to me, "You're not fully dilated yet. You can't push." And this was all whilst the second midwife was trying to hook me up to machines. So, which I wasn't really cooperating with, I guess, because I just kept on moving. I
Mm.
was like, if you're going to force me to be on machines, you have to put up with me moving. Even though I didn't articulate any of this, it was just kind of what my body was doing. I was
Yeah,
just
right.
moving, kind of like what you said, that you just do it.
Mm.
It's kind of just an instinct that just happened, and I just was, yeah, I was moving, my body was pushing. And yeah, so the first midwife started to get a bit angry at the fact that I was pushing, and I was laying on the bed kind of on my side, and she was basically like, you have to stop pushing, you have to stop moving. If not, you will rip yourself up from the inside, you will die, your baby will die.
Oh,
And just constantly going on about that. So
wow.
then it was in my head that that's it. Like, that's it. So I started to be like, you need to give me an epidural so that I don't feel anything because I cannot stop pushing. And that was when, like, my husband started really freaking out and was like running around trying to get another midwife in. I only had two midwives in at that stage and trying to find an epidural or something. At this stage, my waters broke naturally.
Mm.
And the second midwife, who was amazing, was just getting things done. So she realized that she couldn't put the monitors on me because I was moving around too much. So she's like, we're going to just put it on your baby's head so then we can still monitor and see if the baby's doing okay. And yeah, so the second midwife was just kind of act with what was going on. But
Mm.
the first midwife was very much so, you have to stop. You need to stop, and just like constantly telling me that. So pretty
Mm.
much this was all a 15-minute window. So
Yeah.
this was a very small time pocket. And all I remember is all of a sudden everyone stopped talking to me and they just let me do my thing. And that was like the best thing to ever happen. And I was like, I now have permission in a way. So when
Yeah.
people stopped talking to me, I was like, oh, thank gosh, I can just push and I can just do what I need to do. So I still wasn't in any pain, or the only thing was I was scared because someone was telling me that I
Yeah.
need to stop doing what I felt
What your body was
I
telling you to
needed to
do.
do, and that we were both going to die, which, as I said, was my fears from the beginning.
Mm.
So it was just, that was the only part that was scary.
Yeah.
But apart from that, like, it was once everyone just left me, and I remember it so well, it was like relief and just pleasure and just okay. And literally, he came out in like, they just got the monitor on his head, and he came out in like 3 or 4 pushes after that.
Wow.
And the head came out, and then the body came out. And yeah, it was just like, I literally gave birth and they put him on me, and I turned to my husband and I'm like, I could do that again. like the second I gave birth. Whereas the first time I gave birth, and like after a day or something, I was like, you have to cheat on me if you want another child because I'm not going to do it. So
Wow.
like that to me was just massive. And then so he was out. It was just, yeah, it was just beautiful. And then I was like on cloud nine after that. I was just like, oh my God, that was just such
Wow.
an amazing experience. Like,
Yeah,
I can't believe I just did that. That was amazing.
What was
Yeah.
the bonding like this time?
Oh, it was straight away,
Oh, wow.
which in a way was lovely because I got to experience that, which like
Yeah,
after I've spoken about it with like my mom especially,
yeah,
she's just like, I'm so glad that you got to have that,
yeah, me too.
like that connection
Mm,
straight away and got to have those feelings.
yeah.
But he was born, he never left my side,
Mm,
which was something that meant so much to me. He didn't leave my side until he was about 6 months old.
yeah.
And so I just remember just staring at him. He was born at like 7:30 at night. I
Mm,
didn't really take my eyes off him the whole night. Like I just stared at him or was holding him or just, yeah, it was just so special. And now to this day, he's 3 and he is such a mama's boy and has my heart. Like
wow.
it's just amazing. Like I can't even describe it well.
So,
But
Cara,
yeah,
you had a bit of a trigger in towards the end of that birth with the
mm,
midwife playing on your greatest fear, which was around
mm,
death. And that's, God, hearing that right at that point was really,
yeah,
would have been very, very difficult. One of the
yeah,
things I'd say to our listeners about this, midwives work with a huge array of different people, all with different ideas, belief systems, levels of preparation. And their job is to read the situation and read the woman and where she's up to in her labour. And sometimes they can fall into the trap of assuming that all women show certain signs, which the more women you work with, the more you realise just how diverse and different and unique every woman is. And every time she has a baby, she'll respond differently. And so it sounds like your midwife fell into the trap of just assuming she knew better than you, and she was looking more at her through her own filters and less at watching you. I had a beautiful midwife once, a home birth midwife, who shared her belief around birth. She said, the woman knows. She doesn't know that she knows, but she knows. And when you ask her the question,
mm,
she'll give you the answer. She knows
yeah,
what needs to happen. And I do believe a lot of that wisdom, midwifery wisdom, comes when midwives learn to attune to the birthing mother and they learn to just be really present to what's happening and to look for the signs of the way this particular mother communicates what's going on. So it was a shame that happened, but it sounds like once
mm,
she closed a trap, you were able to connect
yeah,
back into that birthing
yeah,
power, and you're able to get back on track. So how did you
yeah.
feel about the birth after a bit of time, a bit of distance, given what you'd experienced first time round?
I just loved it. Like
Mm. So that,
every time
yeah,
I spoke about it to anyone, like it
yeah.
was just, I was sore. Ended up having like a first degree tear, I think,
Oh
and
yeah,
like I was still quite sore, but it was just
yeah.
amazing and I loved it. And people came into hospital to visit, and I was just like, it was amazing. It was great. Like, everything's
Wow.
amazing, and my baby's so beautiful. Like, yeah,
Oh,
it was such a positive
very different experience.
experience, very different, like polar opposites
Yeah.
of what it could be.
Mm.
And yeah, it was just amazing. And even though I had, those experiences with the midwife, I do still tell that because I think that that's a very important part of the story of how my little son came.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from all the positive feelings that I had
Mm.
going, like having him and the birth story. I was extremely empowered by not needing any medical intervention, of laboring, without any kind of pain.
Yeah.
So much, like from 0 centimeters dilated to 6 centimeters dilated, I was just on cloud nine kind of thing.
Wow.
So yeah, there were just so many positives in that situation. But
So
like I said, I like to talk about it, so I kind of just like tell everyone.
Yeah. Well, you did a really big shift from the first experience where you're in denial about the whole process to then getting prepared for baby number 2. Completely transformed your experience. What did you learn about yourself, Cara?
Oh, I don't know. I think, that I can just do it. And like I'm pregnant again. So I'm 35 weeks now. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do this and it will be okay. And I've had none of those kind of thoughts of I'm just gonna die or my baby, something's gonna happen. Like definitely changed with that, and just very positive, trying to stay very positive and excited, and just.
And you're doing a little refresher this weekend.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, well done. That's great.
So
It'll be lovely to
remember
have you back.
everything, going in fresh.
Yeah. That's great. That's really good. And what would you tell a pregnant woman?
I honestly, with every pregnant woman that I speak to, I'm like, it can just be fine. Like there can be, that everything just goes really well and that you don't feel hurt or pain or suffering. But mostly I say that I talk about the bond, and I go, if you don't feel it straight away, it's fine. It's okay. It can come, because that's something that really messed with me with my first child.
Yeah.
And made me feel really guilty. So with pregnant women, I mainly say, just, you'll be fine. I often talk about that first, once you give them birth, I feel there's like this moment, the first minute or so, just after you've given birth, that gives you this amazing sensation that nothing can ever replace. And you can't explain it. You can never replicate it, because unless you give birth again. But like that minute or 2 minutes just after you give birth. And I had it with my first, even though the circumstances were stressful. And I had it with my second.
Wow.
And I'm excited to have it again with my third. So those are my main messages that I tell pregnant people.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So Cara's story was interesting, going from a place of being in denial, having a birth that came early as a result of an infection, then feeling incredibly overwhelmed by the experience, having her baby removed, feeling quite disconnected from the whole process, taking a few years to get back on track and learning what that birth was inviting her to learn, which was that she was okay. Regardless of what happened, she was still a good mum. She was going to be okay, and she learned to forgive herself. Very powerful lessons right there. No birth is ever in vain. To the second story, where she realised she's got to do it differently this time. She went hunting. She found the Transform Your Birth course. She did the training. She really committed to the practices, and she went from being really scared to really excited. And that's the sort of changes that we notice when we start to work on a subconscious level. We don't just give people good information. We actually help them to shift their subconscious program, so they're not just thinking differently, they're labouring differently. So that on the day when she was being induced, she was excited, she was ready to welcome this baby. She had a really powerful, positive mindset. She was very efficient just with the tape alone, which was really good. She didn't need too much extra fuss to help this baby come along. Had a little bit of a glitch with the midwife, but still she was able to tune into that birth force within her and welcome this baby, this beautiful son, with love and a high to the point where she was ready to have another one. So lots of great points in Cara's story for us to learn from. And I think when we do the preparation and we start to work on a subconscious level, we can really transform the way things unfold. So thanks again for listening, everybody, and we will have another story for you next week. Thanks, Cara, for coming along. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. Transform Parenting is a childbirth and parenting education organisation that supports families through pregnancy all the way through the first 7 years of parenting. Why not watch our free webinar on Keeping Relaxed and Excited About Birth, where we discuss the 3 most important things that will change a birth. You'll find us at our website on www.transformparenting.com.au. Thanks for listening.